Get ready for truth bombs and guidance from conservative leaders and entrepreneurs from God-fearing, freedom-loving, truth-telling, patriotic Americans. Welcome to Patriots with Grit. Now let's jump into today's episode with your host, Darren Ross.
You know, it's totally amazing that if you look back on history in the past few decades about how humanity has been enslaved, Randy, and I never knew that. I never paid any attention until the last 3.5 years with the biggest hoax ever dropped on humanity, how much enslavement we're all in. What about you?
Oh, there's much more than we even ever realized, and Larry's going to pull it all together.
We'll be right back.
Wow, it's so soft and smooth.
It's cool to the touch. How did you do that?
Well, we took MyPillow's patented fill and combined it with this new technology that we didn't have back then when I invented MyPillow to bring you the best pillow in history, MyPillow 2.0. Because of all of you, MyPillow 2.0 has been a huge success, and now we're bringing you our best-selling Go Anywhere MyPillows with the same temperature-regulating technology. Made with my patented adjustable fill and brand new cooling fabric, they're truly the next generation of MyPillow. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save over 60% on our MyPillow 2.0 4-pack special. You'll get 2 MyPillows and 2 Go Anywhere MyPillows, regular $259.92, now only $99.98. King size just $10 more. This is a limited time offer, so please order now.
Larry Ballard is the author of Liberty Crusade. This book resulted from a near-death experience in 1968 when God provided Larry with a message to the people which would be revealed in the future when America and the world teetered on the brink of moral and economic collapse. Liberty Crusade empowers people by showing them who our enemy is, what the enemy's agenda is, and precisely how he has managed to divide mankind and enslave us. This knowledge empowers us to stand united and take back our freedom, usher in God's harvest of souls and a new economic system based on kingdom values. This is a God-ordained message of hope amidst chaos. This is Global Insights with Larry Ballard.
Well, Larry, thanks for joining us again today on Patriots with Grit. You're the author of Liberty Crusade, and I will have to say you're one of our favorite repeat guests. I was going to say favorite repeat offenders, but I thought guests might be a little bit better. And, you have you're a very prolific, proficient researcher and deep into history, and it seems like most of the things that you talk about, my friend, are right on the brink of occurring or have already occurred. So talk to us today a little bit about the 50 ways humanity has been enslaved.
I think this may be the most important video we ever do. For the last several weeks, God's been just knocking on my door. I'm not saying I'm prophetic, but he's been giving me an unction that says things are about to happen in a big way. And when they do, I think the financial system is about to collapse. It's going to be like a lion in the jungle that's been wounded. The enemy is likely to do anything. And I'm afraid they just might try to pull off another 9/11 type event. So that's part of what this is about. It's only a part, but it is a warning that says basically this. If they pull off another 9/11, please, folks, don't go sign up in the military. Don't send your sons off to fight a foreign war. I'm going to show you that every war we've ever been in has been caused by a false flag event, has had some nefarious purpose that was inflicted on us, and they're not just wars. So don't allow yourself to get suckered into it. And in terms of why I think this might happen, remember, besides being a Bible scholar, I'm a historian. And right now we're coming up on Jubilee, a 50-year period at which the transfer of wealth occurs. And usually there is a financial collapse of some sort the last month of Jubilee, which ends on September 15th. And then if we look at the disclosures that are coming out more and more and more on Biden, it looks like there's getting ready to give a data core dump, this releasing the truth. And when that happens, everything's going to break. So let's dive into this, and I'm going to do something I've never done before. I believe this is so important that I'm going to ask the people watching this to do something special. I'm going to ask you to send this off to every friend you have. See if we can't make this go viral. Ask them to send it to every friend they have. They say there's only 7 degrees of separation between any two people in this world. So if the people watching this video will do that one simple thing, maybe we can get this urgent SOS message out to the masses. So thank you.
And Larry, you know, one of the things that we talked
Let's
about.
dive in.
Yeah, one of the things we talked about last night was some of the people that have been following you will recognize some of these slides. Mm-hmm. But the key to this presentation is that all of the shows you've done, you've pulled some of this together to show the influences of the deep state and the you know the corrupt globalist and how they've controlled us for years. So that's what the whole thing is. And once you see some of these slides, you might recognize them, but we'll be pulling those together.
And the thing that concerns me, Larry, is my perception is I feel like a lot of people, a fairly large percent of humanity, primarily people in the U.S., don't really know they've been enslaved. I mean, I didn't.
No,
I didn't know that.
I thought we had a good life.
I did too. But when the corona pandemic thing came down, it just changed my whole perspective of the entrapment that we've been in. So yeah, let's dig in today's show, my friend.
Well, as you know, I had a near-death experience in 1968, and what God told me was that my message was going to be, the truth will set you free. And that's what this is going to do. This is a power-packed presentation. What God has showed me is that I would be able, if I got enough information from the Bible and history and current events, to see everything from a 60,000-foot elevation. And that would allow me to see it in its most simplistic terms, and I could show the world the full history of the United States. So we're going to start from the very inception of the United States. And in the next few minutes, we're going to go through every major tipping point in the United States of America. And you're going to get an unbelievable viewpoint of everything that has been done to enslave us. So with that, if you want to buy the book, there's the QR code. But if you don't want to buy the book, at least pass this on to a friend. Send the link and ask them to look at it and ask them to pass it on. So let's go to the first slide with real meat and get into this. So folks, what you're going to see is the 50 ways that humanity has been enslaved. And what this picture is showing is we've got puppeteers in the shadow government that are controlling us. We're going to soon be controlled by AI, and artificial intelligence is going to take our jobs away. We're controlled by economic slavery, and we're controlled by sex trafficking and other things that enslave us. So let's go on and we'll go through all of these, and I think it'll shock you. So what you got here is a depiction of Moloch in front of, in fact, the White House. And I ask you a question. We are taking down national symbols all over the country. So how is it if we don't have a demonically controlled shadow government that statues of Moloch are being placed in the White House and in other locations around the country? We, in fact, have a shadow government, and that government is demonic.
Well, it looks like, too, in this photo.
You can go to the next slide.
This photo that you have here with Moloch in front of the White House, it looks like there's a politician with his hand over his heart just right up there basically worshiping Moloch, which is just unbelievable this would be in D.C.
Unbelievable. And where at? I've never seen this anywhere. This is the first time I've ever seen this. Is it on the lawn?
These are 3D printed, and they move them all around the country. They're not put in these locations permanently. They pop up on special events, and then they move them to the next place.
Wow. Okay.
All right, folks. This hopefully won't be too hard for you to believe, but we do have child trafficking. That second picture you see are the symbols for your sexual preference with child, whether you want a boy, whether you want a girl, whether you want some young or not. And they say that their symbols will be their downfall. So the next picture across shows the Pope. And if you can see it close enough, you'll see that triangle that looks like a paperclip on the edge of the Pope's garments. That's indicating that he is, in fact, a pedophile. And that shouldn't be hard to believe when we know the number of priests that have been arrested and have been convicted of pedophilia. And then down on the bottom left, what we see is that the Catholic Church wants a one world religion, just like the globalists want a one world government. And that religion is going to include shamans, and it's going to include witches. They're saying, come back to us, everyone, regardless. There's more than one way to get to heaven. It doesn't have to be through Jesus Christ, and it doesn't have to be through Christianity. So there in the middle, we've got that, again, that picture of Moloch and the one world government. And then over to the left, we've got Epstein Island. And the significance of that is that ties everybody together, because the people that went to that island were from Hollywood, they were from our major corporations, and they were our politicians. They were the power brokers of the world that were all involved in child trafficking and in worship to Moloch. So there it is, people, in a big picture. And now those of you with kids, the entire Hollywood industry has been corrupted, but I chose this to depict because Disney gets our children when they're very young and they don't know what they're looking at. But that first picture has a picture of a phallic symbol, and then look at that, well, those two anal pictures. And I mean, it's just unbelievable. I mean, we've got a drag queen, we've got a nude guy sitting next to a blow up doll. This is the stuff that your children are being exposed to when they're involved with Disney. So just be careful the kind of things that you let your children see. They're trying to brainwash us. They're trying to destroy the family. They're trying to destroy Christianity. They're trying to divide us. They're trying to cause global chaos so that they can win this war without ever firing a shot. Maybe all they have to do is maybe some kind of a false flag event, but they've got us to the point that they think if they just tweak us a little bit more, we'll give up, but we won't. Let's go on.
And, well, I got a comment on this too. We don't see that we're being, our freedoms are being taken, or we are controlled by Christian-based methods. Everything in here is pretty much an evil angle.
Well, that's by design.
Yeah,
for sure.
Well, not if you go to the previous slide where you've got the Pope having child pedophilia emblems on his robe. I mean, it's the church and it's the corporations, it's the banks, it's the politicians. It's basically anybody in any organization or any individual that has power and influence that's willing to sell that power and influence for money. And so basically, it can be anybody, but it certainly is. The church has been diluted. If you go all the way back to the beginning, the people who killed Christ, which was the Sadducees and the Pharisees, they, along with the Romans, that was the Roman general that actually ordered Christ's death, they took over the throne of Christ. And the Pope said that none can come to Christ, none can come to salvation except through the Pope, because the Pope is the vicar of Christ's throne on earth. So what they've done, my whole third book, which will be coming out in January, is about this topic. It's about how they just changed 5 simple things in the Bible. And what it did is it diluted the Bible to the point that they took out the signs, wonders, and miracles and gave us the Laodicean church, the church with no power. So yes, the church is absolutely a part of this. Some of the biggest churches in the world are big because they've bought out, they've been sold. You can go on anytime you want. Okay, so this is very simple, folks. The Council on Foreign Relations, known as the CFR, and the Trilateral Commission are committed to ending U.S. sovereignty and birthing a one world government. More than that, they're committed to ending all sovereign nations. Let's go to the next slide and we'll see why that is absolutely critical. If that's their mission, any politician that belongs to an organization that is committed to ending U.S. sovereignty should be considered guilty of treason. And yet virtually everybody and anybody in Hollywood or in our government belongs to that organization. You got Brzezinski, Colin Powell, you got George H. Bush, you got Clinton, you got Carter, you got Mondale, you got McCain, you got Gore, you got Hillary Clinton. So you're not going to be a power broker in Washington unless you've agreed to belong to the Council on Foreign Relations or the Trilateral Commission, which means that you've been bought and paid for, and you're not serving the people of this country. You're serving the global financial elite and their agenda to end the sovereignty of the United States of America. And if we go to the next slide, you'll see where that takes us and how significant it is. So what we are in the Bible is we're in that period of time where we had two presidents. Two kings. It was Saul and it was David. And now we have Biden and Trump. And the picture down in the lower left depicts the fact that I think there's plenty of evidence that Biden is sold out. He's sold out to the Chinese. He's sold out to the globalist UN, and he's sold out to the globalist EU. And he is the enemy of this nation. And those pictures of those presidents, we've done a whole show on that. I'm just going to make it quick. That represents 100 years of American presidencies. There's only 3 presidents during that period that are not depicted. One is Reagan, the second is Kennedy, and the third is Trump. Every one of these men, I can give you detailed information that will convince you that they sold out to the global elite. They were selected, they were groomed, they were financed, and they were put in office. So if we think the most recent election was the first one to be stolen, we're absolutely naive. These people are put in board as the leaders of our nation because they are controlled by the puppeteers who want to collapse our nation. And let's go on down and you'll see even a bigger picture of what that means. What that means, those people up there were both Republicans and Democrats. It means that they have bought and paid for enough of our politicians that we don't have a two-party system. They have enough votes regardless to get through the really important bills they want. We really have a dictatorship, a uniparty, a one world governmental system dedicated to enslaving the United States and all of humanity. And what they've done to us, they've done to every nation in the world. And you'll see that in the next couple of slides. Let's go on. So this is a slide we've had up before. But basically, I want to point out that you cannot have a global government if you do not have a global network, an organization to control it. And the most heinous and most largest piece of this puzzle is the UN, the globalist UN, that says that they want to inflict Agenda 21 and Agenda 30 and kill 7 billion of us. And over to the left, again, is our friend Moloch. And we've got NATO, which is their military enforcement group. They have the World Bank as a part of the UN organization, the IMF. They control banking. The World Bank is there. Then they have World Trade, because that's one of the keys to their control of money. And then they have the World Health Organization, which was used to cover themselves in COVID. And then down at the bottom, you have to have an army of underlings in order to carry out your high-level agendas. So you've got the CFR and Trilateral Commission and all the people who belong to that. You've got the lying media. You've got the Fed that financially enslaves us. You've got corporate CEOs all over the world. I mean, look at what they've done to us, poisoning our food and giving us chemtrails and so forth. You've got academia who brainwashes our children. You've got unions who tell their people how they're supposed to vote. And you've got community organizers like Obama that go out with the agenda of signing up people to vote. And the agenda that he teaches, that he taught when he came out of Harvard, was backed by Saul Alinsky, Rules for Radicals. And what it says is you can collapse a nation if you can bring them into deep enough debt and divide them. And so this, folks, is what is running your country. This is the global system in action. And it is designed to do nothing more than enslave us and then kill us. We must stand up. We must win this battle. Our lives are on the line. Now we're going to get into the nitty-gritty, starting from the very, very first inception of this country. And very quickly, we're going to go through to the present. And I think it's going to shock you what you're going to see. So we're going to go to the wars, because that's where the control mechanism actually starts. So we can go to the next slide. All right, so we start with the Revolutionary War. Benjamin Franklin said the reason we fought the Revolutionary War was so that we would not have to go under a central banking system from the King of England, which would charge us interest for the printing of our money. So, sensibly, we won the war. But before Washington was out of office, we went bankrupt because of that war. And we, in fact, were put under a central banking system. Then the War of 1812 came along. And what was that about? The Congress, the first central bank charter had expired, and Congress said, we're not going to renew it. And the British said, then we'll take you back to colonial status. And we had the War of 1812, which ostensibly we thought we won. But at the end of that war, we signed a second charter, and we were once again under the British central banking system. Then we had the Civil War. And what was the significance there? That was orchestrated by the British. They wanted to pit the North against the South. The South was agrarian, the North was agriculture, and they felt that if they could pit the two nations together, they could literally break us in half and keep America from ever realizing its true potential. And some evidence along that way is Lincoln was assassinated towards the end of the war, and 8 British spies were hung. So that war was also orchestrated by Britain. So we have 3 wars, all orchestrated by Britain, who we today call our friend, who is in fact the greatest enemy we have ever had. Then we go to World War I. And that ship you see there is the Lusitania being sunk. And that was a false flag event. The Germans published articles in the New York paper saying that if you send this ship into our war zone, we're going to sink it. So they loaded it with passengers and sent it in anyway. And then they used that as an excuse to get us into the war. But in a documentary that I've done that's about all these wars in detail, I show that they have found the Lusitania on the bottom of the ocean, and we now know that in fact it was carrying munitions, so it was a legitimate target. This was a false flag event. And I want you to know why we went into World War I, because America had gotten out from under the King's system. The reason they assassinated Lincoln is because he put us on the greenback, which was not under the central banking system, and they couldn't allow that. And we had developed the Industrial Revolution and the Transcontinental Railroad, and we were helping the rest of the world to equalize and elevate their economic condition. And England said, oh my God, we're going to lose control. They're going to put all these railroad systems around. They're going to build all these factories, so we have to start a war. And that seems crazy, but remember, they're on an island. So they knew the war would be fought on the mainland. They're safe. And they knew that their wealth would be intact because their wealth was scattered around the world. After all, England is the nation upon which the sun never sets. So they were willing to kill 15 million people in order to keep control of trade by the sea. Then we go to World War II. And that was really brought on because they so inflicted pain upon Germany that Hitler rose up. But we wanted to be in that war. And why? Because we knew we would be like Britain. We would be across the ocean. They would be busy fighting that war in Europe. We would be making billions, if not trillions of dollars, making the weapons of war. We would be rebuilding Europe after the war. So they orchestrated the attack on Pearl Harbor. Franklin Delano Roosevelt had an 8-step plan in order to get the Japanese to attack us. They did pop-ups by sending our ships into Japanese water. They cut off their supply of steel and oil. They baited them, and then they went to an admiral and said, we want you to park the 7th Fleet in Hawaii, where it could be reached by the Japanese. 2 admirals said no. They finally found one that was willing to do it, and the result was that we lost almost all of the 7th Fleet. Then we go to Vietnam. And that was a war that we found out towards the end we never should have fought, because we knew before we went in it, it was unwinnable. And so finally something came out called the Pentagon Papers that proved that in detail. And guess what? Shortly after that, we ended the war. And this is something that every military strategist in the world knows. If you cut off a supply line, the enemy can't fight. So all they had to do, and they knew this from the inception, was mine the Haiphong Harbor. It filled up with silt. In a matter of weeks, the supply line was cut. The war ended. Then we have 9/11, where they attacked our buildings in New York, the financial center of the country, and they already knew that basically we had lost our manufacturing to China, and they knew that this was going to hit the financial sector, and it was going to collapse the stock market, and the only thing left as far as an engine to the United States economy was going to be real estate. And so they drove us into the 2008 financial collapse, which we'll touch on later. And then you've got the Arab Spring. And what the Arab Spring was all about was principally they wanted to get rid of the power brokers in the Middle East that were holding the people down because they basically knew they'd go into a civil war. But the real thing was that Gaddafi was getting together with a bunch of North Africans, and they had a lot of gold, and they were going to go on a gold standard, and that couldn't be allowed. So they had to have the Arab Spring, and then there was one other ulterior motive. They specifically inflicted massive pain on Syria, causing the Syrian refugee crisis where 6 million people fled to Europe, and they're Muslims, and they can have more than one wife. They have multiple children, and there had been a 14-year on and off war going on between Christianity and Islam, and neither one of them had ever really gained power. But now in one generation, we are going to have a Muslim majority in Europe, and they will inflict Sharia law. So they will have toppled Europe in one generation through what they did with the Arab Spring. This, friends, is how the inception of how they control us is with war. Let's go on.
Larry, I have to jump in here.
And please, guys, I can't see you.
I want to jump in here
please.
real quick, Larry. You know, you have all these wars mentioned. There's 8 of them here on the screen, and in the previous slide, you had all the organizations that want to the Trilateral Commission, Council of Foreign Relations, academia, unions. Think of the influence that the media and academia only, those two only, have had on those wars here. Call that slide up, Randy. And that when you just went over. Mm-hmm. I believe that all of our kids, grandkids, kids before us, kids that are coming, behind us, they're going to continue to believe everything that has been spewed out on the media or written in the textbooks. And when we look back at it, a lot of it's just a facade.
At the Nuremberg trials, it came out that you can bring the public into a war, whether they're a democracy, whether they're fascist, no matter what they are. It doesn't make any difference. All you have to do is have an event, a false flag event, and then tell the people who are peacekeepers, you're not patriotic. You're against our war. So all the pacifists are labeled as traitors by the media. And after a month or 2 or 3 of that constant bombardment, the American people, the people of any nation of the world, are ready to go to war. And Caesar talks about that also, how he can beat the drum of war and cause people to give up their freedom by going to war. And that's what I'm trying to say to the people now. Don't let them do that to you again. They're all control mechanisms, every last one of them.
Unbelievable. I'm glad you're putting it out there, Larry, because not many people would do this. I mean, you're preaching it. You're speaking truth, and very few people would do that.
Yeah, and when we talked about this last night, I thought it was good that he connect a lot of dots, because this is such a huge picture that a lot of people that don't just spend their time digging into this are never going to see, how they all connect and relate to each other and how it's progressed. But this is a good path we're going down.
Okay, so basically, here's how they transition from war to controlling the economies. So going back even before America was founded, they had a formula or how they were going to use war. There was a 100-year war between France and England. And during that war, England went bankrupt. They went to the Rothschilds and said, will you loan us some money? The Rothschild says, certainly, but we have one stipulation. We will print your money from now to perpetuity, and you will pay us interest for every pound sterling we print. So the formula that's behind all of those wars is the intent is to back both sides, to prolong the war as long as possible, make it as devastating as possible, make it as costly as possible, and then they bankrupt the nation and they force them into a central bank. And he who controls money controls the world. And then the next slide will tell us where it goes from there. And this is where it goes. This is from Vladimir Lenin, and he says, the establishment of a central bank is 90% of communizing a nation. So they take us into a war, they bankrupt us, they impose a central bank, and they're 90% along the way to making us a communist nation. And then, folks, I want you to stop and think, and I want you to go do some research. I want you to look over to the right-hand side of the slide, and you'll see Russia in red. Russia is the only major nation in the entire world that is not part of a global central bank. Russia has stood against globalism since its inception. And I believe that if the truth be known, he may be an evil man, but God is using Putin right now, and he is an anti-globalist along with Trump, and he is at this moment in time our ally. And you should go do some research on what's going on in Ukraine, because, folks, it is not what the media is telling you. Ukraine is one of the most evil places in the world. It is the center for money laundering. It's the center for virus development. It's the center for child trafficking, and it absolutely has to be taken down. And they left Putin no choice, because just like our Cuban Missile Crisis, they were going to allow Ukraine to come into NATO and put missiles just minutes away from Moscow. So you need to do some research, folks. This one's important. You need to know who your friends are and who your enemies are. And in this particular instance, Russia is our friend, Ukraine is our enemy. Okay, so now here's something they did to us. So those wars kept bankrupting us, but we had the granddaddy of all bankrupts in 1933 in the heart of the Great Depression. And in our congressional record, it says that as of this date in 1933, all federal offices exist in name only. The United States is no longer a republic, but a democracy, a socialist, communist government. Now, ask yourself this, folks. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So if we were devised as a republic, a government of the people, by the people, for the people, which is only possible when the people are educated, when they're informed with the truth, and when they vote according to what is in the best interest of the general public, not in the interest of special interest groups. That's been taken away from us by the media, and we have nothing but a corrupt shadow government that runs us. And what they're implementing is the Communist Manifesto. You think you own a piece of personal property right now? You don't own any property. Let me tell you why you don't own it. Because we were set up under aodial ownership, which is the Spanish land grant system for ownership of real estate. I used to be a broker, folks. I was in that industry for 12 years. I know what I'm talking about. We then went to fee simple, and that gave the government take rights. So here's an example. You got a $500,000 house. You have a medical condition. You can't pay your taxes for a year, and you owe them $10,000, let's say. They can come and take your house. They don't make any effort to sell it for its fair market value. They take it for the $10,000 tax lien. And generally speaking, because I handled a number of those transactions when I was a real estate broker, who am I going to see if the offer is going to be accepted? Fannie and Freddie. Most people don't know that most community banks sell their mortgages. They don't keep them. And so generally you're dealing with Fannie and Freddie, which means you're dealing with the government, which means the government is setting up mechanisms to enslave you, to basically drive you into economic hardship so they can come and take your house. So if you think the Communist Manifesto is not being implemented, when we had the 1933 collapse and our republic was dissolved, here's what happened. They put an entire army of unelected bureaucrats into the government, and all of those, the Patriot Act, for example, the stimulus bill, for example, do you think our politicians wrote those? Hell no. They were written by people who were paid as lobbyists and written by the people that are in the government and they never were elected, the bureaucrats, and they're all written to enslave us, to break us financially. They don't benefit us. They benefit the agenda of the global elite. The shadow government must fall. Unless you got some comments, we can go on.
Larry, we're going to take a quick break and hear from one of our partners real quick. We'll be right back. So we're super excited here at Patriots with Grit because this week we had some new toys, gadgets, and gizmos shipped into us here at the studios. But first, we have a question. What are you going to do when the power grid goes down or cell phone towers stop working and you're unable to communicate with your friends, family, and loved ones like you're used to doing with your cell phone?
You're not unless you have a satellite phone. You're really going to be stranded and up a creek without a paddle. Satellite phone connects to the Iridium network. That's the same network that the military uses and covers 100% of the Earth. Then there's the Bivy stick, which you can carry around, and it will convert your normal phone to a texting device.
So if you can see the sky, you can make calls and or text. Traditional cell coverage is only about 7% of the earth. No one can listen to your calls, no one can track you, and it's the most secure way to communicate from satellite phone to satellite phone. Plus, all your text messages are secure, and no one can read them other than the person that you're sending them to. Plus, you don't get any ads and nonsense sent to your phone. Everything's 100% private. So all you have to do is visit sat123.com/grit. That's sat, S-A-T, 123.com/grit. Talk to them about getting you and your family set up on a satellite phone today. Larry, this is one of my favorite topics. Is a lot of the three-letter crooked agencies: FBI, CIA, Department of Justice. We know how crooked and corrupt they are. It's just unbelievable what they're doing with our J6 people and doctors who, refused to do what they were told to do during the pandemic crisis. And I never knew how weaponized our own three-letter agencies were against our own people.
Yeah, and here's how they did it. Basically, we go back to the CFR. The CFR had an entire army of spies around the world. So when World War II broke out, we had to have a spy network immediately. Sun Tzu, the author of, I just forgot the name of the book, The Art of War, said that you cannot win a war unless you have spies in the enemy's camp. And so basically what we did is we took in the CFR spy network, and it eventually became the FBI, at least at the high levels, the CIA, the Department of Justice, the Department of Defense, and all the other three-letter agencies, and they were used against the American people. So that let's look at a couple of examples. Right now in California, you can be a homeless person, go into a big box store, and you can steal up to $1,200, and they won't arrest you. They won't prosecute you. And so now big box stores in California are one by one beginning to close. So basically the justice system is absolutely corrupt. So we're putting indictments out against Trump, and we're so far not indicting Hillary or Obama or Biden. And so basically we have a two-tiered system that's unbelievable, because all of these agencies, just like our politicians, just like our presidents, just like our CEOs, just like the CEOs of our banks, are all dedicated to controlling us, to collapsing this economy and driving us into absolute slavery. They are in fact treasonous, and they are our enemy, and we must stop them, period. If we don't, most of us are going to be dead. That's just the bottom line.
Larry, what do we need to communicate to our own citizens and the people of the United States that these agencies are not for us? Because I think most people, if you were to interview them on the sidewalk going into a Chili's or a Sam's Club and ask them about the DOJ or the CIA or the FBI, sadly, I think the majority of them are going to, think they're upstanding agencies. How do we get across to these people in the country that they are against us?
Well, let's start where we are right this minute. So, folks, please, I'm asking you. I'm not doing this for money. I've been doing this for 55 years because God gave me this assignment. Please, please tell every friend you have. Send this link to everyone and ask them to send it out. Like I said, we're 7 degrees of separation. God's got a lot of people. Here's what I believe God's been telling me. I look in things and I see patterns because I'm able to have an almost photographic memory. I'm able to see things over hundreds and even thousands of years. And so I put these patterns together, and what I see happening is even if they have all of the information, they withhold it until the very end. We go through a long period of disinformation. And right now, the purpose for that is to wake the people up by saying, that's absurd, that's absurd, that's absurd. There's no reason to arrest Trump. There's every reason to arrest Biden. So drip, drip, drip. But what I think is beginning to come that I'm seeing is more information is coming out on Biden, more information is going to be leaked. And it's just like their election cycles. They go through and they say a little bit about their opposing candidate and a little bit more. You get closer. They think people have a short memory span. So a month out, they drop kind of a big disclosure. And then a week before, they drop an atomic bomb of truth. And I think where we're coming to is the point that they're going to start to release the whistleblowers that they've had all along. We're going to see that the election was stolen. We're going to see what I said is that all these presidents for the last 100 years have been groomed, selected, financed, and placed in office. And when that happens, and the American people are shocked with what's been done, the degree to which they've been held in slavery, all we have to do is stand up. If in the division, stand together and say to the people, we will no longer participate in our own slavery. And the model that we have for that is England. We fought a bloody war to get our freedom. England rallied around one man, Mahatma Gandhi, and said, we are going to boycott Britain's economic system. And finally, they broke it. And Britain said, you're costing us more money than you're worth. You're free. So we are millions. They are globally probably not more than 200,000. If we refuse to participate in our own slavery, they're done. And when the avalanche of truth comes out and the people realize that not only are we going to be financially enslaved, but as we get further down in this, we're going to lose our lives. And most of us are going to be dead. We're going to be highly incented to stand up and to make our voices heard. And what God has shown me from the inception, from that day in 1968 when I had my near-death experience, this is all planned. God, unfortunately, has to bring people to their knees over and over and over again because we just can't stay on track. This is the extension of Abraham's promise. That Abraham, having proved himself righteous by being willing to thrust a knife into his son's chest, just like Christ gave his son for our salvation. And God says, stop, there's a lamb in the thicket, use him for your sacrifice. And God said, Abraham, you have proven yourself righteous for what you have done. I shall make of you a great nation, the United States, and great nations, plural, the colonies of England. And I will make of you as the sands of the seas and the stars of the sky. So at that time, there were 500 million people on the earth. When I was born, there were 2 billion. Now there's 8 billion. My Bible tells us that we will soon return to 1 to 2 billion. 2/3 of the world's population is going to be taken out. 1/3, the remnant, is going to be taken through the fire of affliction, proving themselves righteous, and will move us in and through and past the tribulation into the 1,000-year millennia. That's the agenda that God has shown me. The global elite do not win. They will eventually get their one world government, or most of it, but not until we go into the book of Revelation. We're now in the harvest of souls. The greatest harvest of the world is ever going to see, and it's about to break out. And Christ told us, he said to his apostles, there shall become a time in the latter days when knowledge is increased, when man will walk into the latter day reign, and that will bring signs, wonders, and miracles on the earth far greater than anything you have seen when you walked with me. And they replied, oh, but that we could live during that period of time. We're coming into a time when the world is going to be so shaken that they're going to be willing to bow their knees to God. And when that happens, it's going to be just like the 120 in the upper room when the tongues of fire were released on them. We're going to see signs, wonders, and miracles. And we're going to understand that Donald Trump may have had a role, just like Mahatma Gandhi, and people like you and people like me may have had a role, but it was so big that it could not have happened had God not orchestrated. What we're about to see is many, many, many times bigger than what we saw in the Exodus. That was just one country. That was just Egypt. This is the entire world. What I believe we're going to see when these disclosures come out and when this financial collapse occurs, the government of the United States is going to collapse, and we've talked about why. That's because BRICS is intentionally being used to collapse the U.S. dollar as the world's reserve currency, which is going to trigger that financial collapse. When that happens, the people are going to be in panic. All the information and the truth is going to be released, And then we get on our knees, and basically God enters in, and man sees the greatest miracles we've ever seen. That's the way the story ends. So, folks, if anything I've said scares you, just be heartened. We win, they lose, but we have to go through the fire of affliction so that we'll finally pay attention and worship God and realize our true potential. We are the sons of God. He is eternal. We are eternal. We have within us a spark of God, and all we have to do is submit to it and surrender to it.
So I just want to let the viewers know that Larry's got a heck of a thunderstorm going on there.
Yeah, there's gunshots outside
Yes,
his
we do.
office window. So, but Larry, I want to add something to what you just said. You know, I believe the world population is about 8 billion. But if people would actually do their research and do the math on how many elected and non-elected officials there are compared to how many people there are, I think they would be shocked at the exponential increase in people versus elected and non-elected officials. And everybody still just wants to cower and bow down to all these people when all it would take is just a slight bit of pushback from a few billion people and it'd be over.
That's right. Absolutely. Like I said, I doubt there's more than 200,000 of them, and there's 8 billion of us. So you're going to tell me
I've
that
heard between 200
200,000
and
of them
300,000 globally.
Yep. And so, we could do just what India did, and I believe we will. I believe we'll say no. We're no longer going to participate in our own slavery. And when that happens, it's just like on the walls of Jericho. It's just like in many other instances of the Bible. God waits for his people to stand up and to participate. And when they do, he wins the battle. We're going to win. But folks, we've got to surrender to God, and we've got to show him that we're willing to commit to him. And when we do, we're going to be happier than we've ever been in our lives. We've talked about the economic system that I think God has shown me, and it's one that completely destroys their narrative that, oh my goodness gracious, we've got to kill 7 billion people because we don't have enough resources to feed them. So basically, global sustainability, resource sustainability is the lie that they're giving us. And we'll talk about why that is, in fact, a lie. So you ready to go on to the next slide since you popped it up?
We're ready. Let's do it.
So basically what this is something we've had up before. They have a formula for almost everything they do. They can control who is going to be a global superpower and win. And all they have to do is that nation has to control the natural resources. They have to control manufacturing and trade. They have to sell them, so they have to control the supply mechanism. That converts into money, and then that money is used to buy power and influence in every single solitary strata in the world. Your politicians, your academia, your media, your corporate leaders, your bankers, everybody is bought and paid for, and they used to control us. So there's the formula for how you're being enslaved, folks. And the next slide, if it comes up in the sequence I think it is how they periodically collapse the financial system to keep you in poverty. So it's a very simple formula that was basically uncovered during the 1929 collapse when Lindbergh said that it's a formula. And what they do is they increase the money supply. They lower the interest rate so people are willing to jump in. They push you at a key investment opportunity. In 29, it was the emergence of the Industrial Revolution, the automobile, the telephone, and the railroad, etc. So they always do something they've never done to really get you to come in mass. So you could buy those stocks in the stock market for 10% down, 90% leverage, and then all they have to do is sit back and make a bundle of money as those stocks go up and up and up and up. And then at the appointed time, all the global elite get together and say, we're pulling all of our margin calls in, and the market collapses. And that's what they did then, and that's what they're doing now. Except, folks, I want to give you a barometer. In 29, they increased the money supply 62%. And that gave us the Great Depression. Now, since COVID, America has printed more money since then till now than it had printed in the entire history of this nation. And the same goes for virtually every nation on the planet. So when I say we're poised to have an economic collapse, it is an economic tsunami the likes of which we have never, ever, ever seen, folks. Buckle up. But the good news is, I believe, if I'm hearing correctly from God, it'll be traumatic, but it's also going to usher in the transfer of wealth. And so those of us who are aligned with God and aligned with his word, he's going to take us through this. He cannot lie. He has told us that he will, just like the Exodus in Egypt, when the Israelites left with money, we are going to leave with money, and we're going to have signs, wonders, and miracles that are going to restore the health of many of us. So again, what looks horribly scary is actually good news. Do you guys have a comment?
Yeah, I do. Most people, I'm going to say the large majority of people have no idea how bad this can be. What you just said is a lot of people have in our time have not experienced a depression. But what you're telling us is it is far worse as far as the amount of money they've printed. It's like they dumped it all on us with the intention of just a mass collapse. And this is intentional, and I don't know how we're going to see anything less than a depression.
Well, remember, we did a whole show on how they've orchestrated this. Now, basically what they've done is in COVID, they changed some regulations. It used to be that you had to, if you were a bank, you had to keep 10% of your deposits in reserve. Well, under COVID, they said, scratch that. There's no longer any reserve. You can loan out 100% of what you got. So now they have every nation in the world up to their nose in debt. And now they basically are going to trigger that. And basically what they've done is by taking the reserve off, the federal FDIC probably has less than 1% of the money it would require to bail out a major banking collapse. And so it's going to fall back on the American people. They promised they would never again give us bailouts, but that's what they did with the Silicon Valley Bank. And now they passed the Dodd bill that says, well, we're going to give ourselves the right to do bail-ins, which means that we are going to take your assets. Because when you put your money in the bank, guess what? You sign your rights over to the bank. So they're going to try this time to do bail-ins and bailouts. But that's going to go against them because the collapse is going to be so catastrophic, and because we're going to change governments. And I predict the government of the United States will fall, and because of the massive amount of debts and the uprising by the people, there will be entire governments around the world that will fall. And what that's going to do is it's going to shift the scenario from a scenario where this reset sees the global elite come in to utterly, completely, and absolutely control us, to a scenario where they lose control, their governments collapse, their power is taken, and we get freedom. A freedom the likes of which we have never seen, a freedom overseen by God, who is the master of the universe, who is the creator of all wealth, and he will do what? Open the windows of heaven and pour out a blessing upon us, the likes of which we cannot imagine. Just hold on, folks. It's going to get bumpy, but at the end of it, you're going to see the most amazing period of time the world has ever seen.
Well, and to go along with that, on August 22nd, BRICS is going to, I guess, be official. So I'm going to jump to that slide so you can talk about that. But you look at this, the G7 represents 20% of the world's population, and if BRICS goes to support 80% of the population, where does that leave the United States?
Between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah.
Basically, what's happened is BRICS has been out there for quite a while, but it had no traction until Saudi Arabia officially said, we will transact oil sales in other than the US dollar. When that happened, nations around the world said, we'll support you. And so supposedly what's going to be announced at that meeting, it starts on the 22nd and it's tentatively scheduled to end on the 28th. Supposedly they're going to announce, that's 80% of the world's population, that they're going on a commodities-based economic system, a gold-backed system, which means that governments are not going to want our worthless fiat currency, and that's going to cause our T-bills that have to be held in order to transact cross-border payments. There's about roughly $127 trillion that the banks hold to do that. That money's going to be worthless. It's going to come back to the U.S., and it's going to collapse the U.S. government. And because we're such a large part of the economy, it's going to collapse the entire global system. And I don't know if at this particular point China will fall, but China has a number of problems. And I believe that they might find themselves having put themselves in a bad position here, because I think that what they think is going to give them their power is going to cause them to lose it. But the reason that people want to get out from under the US dollar is because we promised back when we had Bretton Woods, well, we won't print money to ad nauseum, lie. We won't use our power as the world's reserve currency to control you. And yet we have sanctioned nation after nation after nation and said to them, if you don't follow US policy, we'll freeze your assets. And so the world has said, enough. The world has said to China, we don't want to be controlled by your trade and your cheap breakable goods that last for a year or less, and we don't want to be controlled by the United States with the world's reserve currency. So we're going to in a completely new economic system. And I think maybe the next show we do, we should follow up with this kind of a detail on why the collapse is going to occur and what's going to look like afterwards. So this takes us to where all that money that they get goes and how they control us. So Sun Tzu says, if you're going to fight a war, the absolute greatest victory you can have is to fight the war without ever having to fire a shot or fight a battle. And if you're going to do that, you have to put your spies in, and you have to start brainwashing the people 20 to 40 years in advance. So starting in the 50s, they started attacking patriotism, the family, and the church, and destroying the very things that America was founded on. Our Constitution was founded not on the principles of law, but on the 10 commandments of the Constitution. And then they've used religion to divide us, and they've used the media to divide us. They've used education to brainwash our children. And Stalin said, if you give me your children for 4 years, the seed I plant will never be removed. And then we've got the lying media, and there's another graphic on that in a minute that'll show you just how much we're controlled by the media. And then there's also something on the entertainment field. I could have done Hollywood, but I just picked Disney. And then we've got the economic system, which we've already talked about, how they basically use wars to cause us to be forced into a central bank, which is 90% of establishing communism. They embed a shadow government, and they go about step by step, piece by piece, collapsing us and driving us into economic servitude. And then they buy our politicians and control us with laws that are unjust and unfair and are designed not to help us, but to serve the global elite. So comments on this one, guys?
No,
that's their control mechanism.
No, I just
One of you guys want to read this?
Yeah, go ahead. I'll let Darren read it.
This is by Barack Hussein Obama, How to Destroy America with Misinformation and Propaganda. You just have to supply the nation's public square with enough raw sewage. You have to raise enough questions, spread enough dirt, plant enough conspiracy theorizing that citizens no longer know what to believe. Once they lose trust in their leaders, in the mainstream media, in political institutions, in each other, in the possibility of truth, the game is won. And that was by Barry Soetoro, a.k.a. Barack Hussein Obama.
And that's Michael's wife, by the way.
And if you go back to that last slide, that's what this is talking about. They control those 7 spheres of influence, and they get us to the point that we are passive, which is, by the way, another one of the doctrines of communism and the Communist Manifesto. You don't have to defeat an enemy on the battlefield. You just have to make him feel hopeless. And that's what they're doing by controlling these 7 spheres of influence and brainwashing us since 1950. It's all going to change, folks, and it's going to change for the better. All right, so here's the truth about the media. We used to have, I think it was 60-some news outlets, and now we think we have 6, but in fact we have 1, because the Rothschilds own Reuters, which controls the AP and all the news outlets. So basically, if Reuters doesn't release it, it doesn't get released. So the whole intent is they've got that microphone. They utterly, completely control it. They feed us lies, half-truths, and a little bit of the truth blended together in such a way that we can't tell the truth from a lie, our enemies from our friends, just like Barack Obama said, and that is used to turn us into mindless sheep. But folks, the truth is going to set us free, and it's coming like an avalanche and a tsunami, and it's going to wipe out government after government after government, and we're going to break the chains of slavery.
And I want to jump on there too, because when you have that influence of one influencer controlling all the media sources, and that influencer is not a Christian loving organization, but they're a satanic agenda, that's where I have a problem when I try to convince people that they cannot watch this mainstream media and have a valid argument. And I don't, everybody has an opinion, but what is your opinion based on? It's based on falsities that you're watching and have watched your entire life.
Well, generations. People have watched it for generations. And it's they don't know any different. And how are they ever going to get out of that bad habit? I mean, I'll admit I was an avid news watcher up until about 2.5 years ago.
Yep, I'm with you.
Fox News. I'd watch some of the other channels on and off, but I was one of those people that pretty much believed whatever I was fed. And now I watch pretty much zero news and, get our information from, truth-telling. Like Randy always says, back end sites or
back channels.
Back channels. People like you, Larry, that have done your deep research, and as opposed to just coming on with the mainstream nonsense.
Think about what you do, Larry, compared to a news anchor that's reading off a teleprompter. They are a talking head that probably has no knowledge of what's really going on.
Well, I've been at this for 50 years. This has been my assignment, and I've been full-time at it since 2008. I retired in 2008. I lost my business in the heart of the financial collapse, and I just said, all right, it's upon us. I've got to now spend full time making myself aware of everything that's being done to us and release it to the people so that the truth can set them free. So that's who I am. That's what I'm about. I'm not here to make money. I'm 76 years old. My vanity is long since gone. I just want to wake people up so that we don't have the slavery that we have, so that my son and my grandchildren can have a chance to have freedom. And I believe we will have that. And I believe that two things have happened relevant to what you guys just said. I believe that it's like Mike Lindell said. We have the evidence. We could have shown that the election was stolen in 2020. But they couldn't do it, because if we did, we were going to have riots in every nation because of the number of people who were still asleep. But now the absurdities of the bills that have been passed and the things that have been done have woken up more and more people. So now I believe we're at the point that we can have the avalanche of release of information. And once we're sitting here totally financially in destitution, here's what the people are going to realize. Trump had the formula. Barack Obama said to him, what are you going to do? Wave a magic wand and fix the economy? Yeah, he knew what the formula was. He gave us our steel and our oil back. He gave us our manufacturing back. He gave us free trade. It took us out of the free trading system and gave us fair trade. And the economy went from the stock market from 10,000 to over 30,000. And he did it in the face of every kind of opposition there was. Now, much of the swamp has been drained. And if we invite Trump back in, and I think he'll be back in soon, it's a simple formula. He'll do those same four things. He'll give us back the Keystone Pipeline. He'll open up Pergo Bay. He'll put massive tariffs against China. He'll allow money to come back in so that we can build our factories. He'll change the regulations so we can build factories and rebuild our infrastructure. And guess what? America will once again, we will rise from the ashes. I've got a whole show that I can do on why, when this collapse occurs, God is going to use America to raise it back up. Brazil can't do it. They've only got less than 3% of the trade in the world. Russia can't do it because though they're the richest nation in the world based on commodities, they don't have much technology. China can't do it because it's on a rapid decline because it's got its own debt issues and the global supply chain is being ripped away from it. And there's no other nation that has We're number 2 in natural resources. We're number 2 in manufacturing. We're probably number 1 in technology, and we have the know-how, and we're a Christian nation. We are the only nation in the world that is going to be able to bring the world back from this catastrophic collapse. And trust me, it's going to be just like with Brentwood after World War II. The world is going to be clamoring for America to come back. And when they come back, we're going to have a completely new, different economic system that just real simply is not based upon goods made by China that are designed to collapse and break in no time and have to be replaced. They're going to be based upon products designed to build for a lifetime, that are reusable, that are fixable, that we don't have to make them once and never have to make them again. We're going to share technology, and we're going to have a system where every nation in the world has an opportunity to have an equal footing in the economy. And what's that going to do long term? It's going to end the cause of all of our wars. So, folks, that's the economic system that God has shown me is on the way. And ironically, it's a foreshadow of the American economic system that made America great in a 34-year period following the Civil War, when we developed the Transcontinental Railroad, the Industrial Revolution, shared that technology with the world, and everybody was raising their standard of living until England decided that they had to break that system, and they caused World War I. That system is going to be reimposed, and we are going to have economic prosperity, the likes of which we can't imagine. So I'll answer questions, or you guys go on and make a comment or whatever.
Let's move on to the next slide here.
So for those of you just listening on the podcast, we highly recommend you go over and watch this on our video channels. But this next exhibit and slide that Larry has is called The Orchestrated Decline of U.S. and the Rise of China. Create a one-world government combining supercapitalism and communism. The Rockefeller file may be the most important story of our lifetime. The drive of the Rockefellers and their allies to create a one-world government combining supercapitalism and communism under the same tent, all under their control. The Rockefellers and their allies have for at least 50 years been carefully following a plan to use their economic power to gain political control of first America and then the rest of the world, and that was by Congressman Larry McDonald all the way back in 1975.
So this is nothing new.
No. And folks, the reason they need that model is because they need the innovation of capitalism and the control of communism. So basically, where we are right now, as we've run out of time, we're only about halfway through, so there's going to be a part 2. So I want to summarize real quickly what we've been doing is going through the 50 reasons, and we're going to end, the second part is going to take you into a greater understanding of why we have to stand up and say no. So please come back, because what we're going to talk about in the second piece is a number of different ways that they are going to create mass extermination. And I think it's going to surprise you the number of mechanisms they have in which to do that. So your very life may depend on understanding what's in this next half. So please join us. And in the meantime, please share that with everyone you know. We need to make this video and the next one viral. That 7 degrees of separation needs to be invoked here, and the people need to have their eyes opened. So with that, I'll turn it back to you guys.
Well, and I think this is extremely important that people see it because of the way you've connected it. We've done a lot of shows of different perspectives, but this pulls it all together and puts it in one bucket of total control. And we have not had the freedom that God gave us to have. This
is kind of like a history textbook that hasn't been rewritten.
Yeah, exactly.
Or revised or removed. But Larry, thanks for coming on today and doing part 1. We're very excited to get part 2 of 50 Ways Humanity Has Been Enslaved. Hopefully I'll have my voice back for part 2. And doing so many shows, it takes a toll on the vocals every now and then. So we just want to say thank you for being such a proficient researcher and sharing your truth and your wisdom with all of our audience and our viewers. And we also want to recommend that people go over and buy your book, Liberty Crusade. And we're anxiously awaiting your next book coming out. I think you said possibly late fall, and you have one coming out again in January, I believe, correct?
Second one is Liberty Crusade Volume 2, Global Insights. And then the third one switches over from politics to religion. And what it does is it shows how the Catholic Church wrote every Bible that we have. and the 5 things that they implanted in it in order to water down the Bible down. So it is an historical account of the Catholic Church's influence on the Bible, and it will open your eyes, folks. It will give you what you need in order to pray with power and finally understand that you can release the God that's within you. And that one will be out in January.
Well, Larry, thanks for joining us again today. We're anxiously awaiting having part 2 of 50 Ways Humanity Has Been Enslaved and having you back on to share that with our audience. So until then, thank you for joining us. We hope to see you back real soon. Take care.
See you, Larry.
It's always a pleasure.
Hey everybody, we just got off a live Zoom call a little bit ago with Mike Lindell along with a bunch of other podcasters, and I'm here to tell you something. There is actually hope for this nation. There's a plan in place right now to save our election platforms immediately. It's never been done before in history, and everyone's going to be able to embrace this plan, whether you're Democrat, Republican, conservative, liberal, it doesn't matter. This plan's been worked on for over a year, and it's going to be revealed and live streamed in 80 languages to the entire world at the Election Summit on August 16th and 17th, and you can watch it unfold right before your very eyes in the comfort of your home, absolutely free. Sign up right now and get exclusive access to this 2-day event. Just go to lindellevent.com, enter your email address, use the referral code GRIT, and Mike's going to send you a free $20 gift directly to your email inbox. Just go to lindellevent.com, enter referral code GRIT, and watch this live event right before your eyes on August 16th and 17th. See ya. Thanks for watching another exciting episode of Patriots with Grit. We want to keep you informed, so if you would, just go over to patriotswithgrit.com and give us your first name and your email so we can keep you up to date. Also, be sure to subscribe, like, and share so we can keep bringing you truth. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.